clean these stained seats?
Well, the stains are our responsibility, and it's been attempted a few times,
Yes?
and not much success.
Oh, okay,
They're pretty much set in, a lot of them.
okay.
But they were free.
Nice chairs.
They were free.
Nice.
You know where they came from?
No.
Paul's Pub.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh.
Jim was redecorating here 10 years ago, something or maybe more than that now.
yes.
More than that.
Oh, really?
No, they never were reupholstered, but they were Mike Ulig reattached them. He put new screws in the bottoms. But that's right. Yeah, Huachuca City guy did a couple of them. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So much better than the metal chairs.
Well, we had the plastic yellow
You like
ones.
plastic?
Yeah, those were terrible.
Oh,
Those
these
were
are nice
really
chairs.
terrible. No, he was. Yeah, we had folding chairs for a while. Got rid of those. Got the yellow ones. Then got rid of the yellow ones. Got these.
And you still don't feel it when you have comfortable chairs.
Well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
It's the way it is.
just pray.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to be in Matthew for a while. If you'll notice at the top of page 16, I guess I forgot to put that up there. Notes, page 16. Notes, page 16. If you notice up at the top, and we already did about 5 of the dashes, bullet points there. But if you notice up at the top, multitudes taught in villages, sends out to 12 and all that, you see Matthew 9:35, which we already read, all the way through chapter 11:1. So the entirety of chapter 10. So we're going to be in chapter 10 for a while, probably 2 sessions at least, I would say. So, without further ado, we shall proceed with chapter 10. Let's first read the naming of the 12. Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. So they would have exactly the same powers of Christ. Now, of course, they didn't have the powers. Christ had the powers. But what he was saying to them, what he was doing, is saying that when you speak, it's as good as I speak. So they would have this ability to do any of the miracles that Christ did. And we know that they did. We know from the book of Acts and from other sources that the apostles did heal lepers, and they did heal the blind, and they did raise people from the dead. And they did all of those things, and they cast out demons and so on and so forth. So all the things that we saw Jesus do, the apostles did, with maybe the exception of we don't see them walking on water, we don't see them feeding 5,000, that kind of thing. Not that they couldn't, but we just don't have any record of those particular kind of miracles. And so now then, Matthew and also the other writers do give us a listing of the 12. So, the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first, Simon, who is called Peter, Andrew, his brother. Notice what Matthew says here, Simon the first. Now, what does that mean? Who was the first disciple who then became an apostle? It wasn't Peter. So why is Peter called the first? Andrew was first, and then he went and got his brother Peter, or Simon. So why is Peter says the first? Why does Matthew do that? Of course, the Roman church would tell us that Matthew did that because Peter was the leader of the apostles. He was the head of the apostles. Now, that is nowhere else stated in those words anywhere by Jesus or in the Bible anywhere. First does not mean either first to follow Jesus or first in the sense of leader. All it means is I'm going to start with this guy. That's all it means. First in the list. Doesn't mean anything else. Perhaps. But first just means here's the list, and I'm starting with Peter. No reason, no explanation, just I'm starting with him. That's it. We can't prove anything from it. So the Roman Church, they can say all they want to. Peter's first pope. That doesn't prove it. Anyway, so we got Simon called Peter and Andrew, and then the brothers, James and John. And that's almost always how they are stated. Peter, James, and John are always together. Andrew sometimes first, sometimes second, sometimes fourth or fifth. Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector. That's the guy who's doing the writing here, so he throws that little aside in. James, the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus. Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. Now, again, this is not being written at the time. This is being written years afterwards. And so, as Matthew writes this, now and then he will throw in a piece of information that comes from the future before the events that he is actually writing about. So at this point in the ministry, nobody knows that Judas is the traitor. They don't even know at the Last Supper. Remember at the Last Supper, Jesus says, one of you is going to betray me, and they all say, who? Is it me? 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 So they don't even know right up till the last minute. Okay, so they certainly don't know at this point. So this is obviously something that is anachronistic. In other words, that Matthew is adding into the story that only becomes known after this time period. So that's the 12. Now, we don't need to go into a lot of detail right here, but the list of the 12 given in other places, such as in Mark 6 and Luke 9, are a little bit different. Sometimes different names are used. This is obviously because Mark is writing first, and he is getting his information from Peter. Mark was not one of the 12, so he's getting his information from Peter. Luke was not one of the 12. He is getting his information from Paul, and Paul was not one of the 12. So you have the instance where you might say Matthew's is kind of the most original or the most accurate as far as the time period, whereas Mark's would come a little bit later in the history of the church, his list, and then Paul's would come later than that in the history of the church. And this would make perfect sense. As time went on, these guys got to be known by different names. Okay. Which of these, for example, was the twin of Thomas? We know Thomas was a twin. Was his twin also one of the 12, or either one of the disciples, the 70? We don't know. We're not told. Okay. So there's a lot of information about these guys we don't have. Some of them are talked about a lot in the book of Acts later. Peter, for example, is talked about quite a bit. We know a little bit about some of the others, but others of them, this is the only time they're mentioned in the entire Bible, and they're never mentioned again. Well, they might be listed. They might be listed in the book of Acts, listed again, but we don't know anything about them. All we know about the 12 apostles that we have today is by church historians. Some of those historians lived 100 years, 150 years, 200 years after the apostles. And by that time, a lot of myths and legends had grown up about them. And so when you, let's say, go on the internet, for example, and you want, what do you know about Andrew the Apostle? All the information that we have outside of these lists like this is going to be speculation, a lot of it, or passed down stories the first couple hundred years of Christianity, not going to be biblical. So everything we know about them. Now, does that mean it's not accurate? No, not necessarily. They were good historians in those days. There were people who paid attention and kept good records. Guys like Eusebius, for example, kept really good records. He was a good historian. I don't think he exaggerated a whole lot. He checked out these stories about the apostles, especially the martyrdom of the apostles. And I think that we can rely, maybe 90% of what they say is to be pretty accurate. All right, let's move on. And then these 12, this is what he tells them. It's going to be a long section. The whole rest of chapter 10, as a matter of fact, is all going to be Jesus speaking to the 12, telling them what's coming for them in their ministries. So we're going to take those in sections. The first section goes from 5 to 15. So these 12 Jesus sent out after instructing them, do not go the way of the Gentiles, do not enter any city of the Samaritans. Now Jesus, of course, had already been through Samaria a couple of times, and he had also been to Gentile cities. But he tells the 12 not to do that. Okay? He, of course, had the right to go wherever he wanted. He's God, all right? And even though he tells the Jews numerous times, I am here for the people of Israel, he himself, to get away from the scribes and Pharisees sometimes, to get into different areas from sometimes another, he will go to Gentile areas. And of course, he is more than free and willing, able to do that. But as far as the apostles are concerned, he wants them to stay in Israel, which means, in this case, in Galilee. He does not want them going anywhere else, not down in Samaria, not out into the Gentile area, and frankly, not even down to Judea, although they could, if they wanted to, travel that far. Rather, go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And especially the northern areas, the Galilean areas, were especially prone to wandering people. This was an area that was heavily influenced by the Greeks and the Romans. This was an area where the Jewish leaders, the religious leaders, did not send a whole lot of teachers, a whole lot of rabbis, a whole lot of pastors, if you will, into this area. And so the northern area, the area of Galilee, was considered to be kind of the area of lost sheep. As you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Now, what do you suppose that means? The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Why not say something more specific? That sounds kind of vague. The kingdom of heaven is at hand.
The Messiah.
Okay, the Messiah is here, is what you're saying, okay? Do you suppose that's how it was heard by these folks? When they heard the kingdom of heaven is at hand, did they automatically think, oh, this means the Messiah is close by, or the Messiah is living at this point?
I don't think they heard much of anything.
Yeah.
A lot of them probably just thought that their wife was getting ready to end.
Okay, maybe, yeah. Maybe they took it that way. Maybe they took it that the world was coming to an end. That's possible, certainly, isn't it? But again, why not say something real?
Often the Israelites flip-flopped around different faiths
Well, following different so-called messiahs, yeah. Right.
worshiping idols.
Right. They did a lot of that, before they went to Babylon. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I've often wondered about this. Why at this point, when Jesus is saying it, he's not saying it that way. Always, he's always saying repent. Repent because repent and believe. That's what he's saying. Now, I don't know why he wouldn't tell the apostles to say the same thing, but he doesn't. He doesn't tell them the kingdom of heaven is at hand. He doesn't say anything about repentance here. Now, perhaps maybe the apostles just assume that, and that would be part of their preaching too. I don't know. I think kingdom of heaven is at hand really encompasses a whole lot of things, doesn't it? It encompasses the coming Messiah. It encompasses repentance, certainly, and contrition. It contains also the idea of believing who the Messiah is and what he is going to accomplish. Yes, sir.
I also think it's basically saying that enough's enough.
Oh, okay.
It's now time.
Yeah.
Because you had the whole Old Testament.
Right.
You had everything.
Right.
You've been saved. You are the chosen people. It's time.
Yeah, it's time. Okay. That's a good way to put it, I think. Yeah. Also, he goes on in verse 8, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Jesus did not charge them for information. He did not charge them. He did not charge a price for teaching them these things. And so they are not to do that either. But notice again, look at the miracles that he gives them the power to do. He gives them the power to raise the dead. Wow, he gives them the power to heal the lepers. He gives them the power to exorcise evil spirits, evil angels. This is pretty amazing stuff. If you or I were told that we had this kind of ability and this kind of power, it might certainly go to our heads, huh? Verse 9, do not acquire gold or silver or money for your money belts, or a bag for your journey, or even 2 coats or sandals or a staff, for the worker is worthy of his support. So don't acquire. How do you hear that? Don't go out and get this.
Don't accept.
Well, is that what it means? Because look at that last section, that last phrase, a worker is worthy of his support. What does that mean?
That these people have worked their lives to get what they have, so don't take it from them.
No.
No?
No.
That's how I sound.
These guys are the workers in this case.
They're going to be provided for by the Lord.
How so? How is the Lord going to give them their food to eat, their shoes to wear, clothes if they need it, a coat if they're cold? Where are they going to get this stuff?
Through the people, through the Spirit.
The people that they are preaching to. Okay? So look at it this way. Don't acquire. In other words, they're all gathered around him right now, and he's telling them, I'm sending you out. Don't go into town. Don't go to the department store and get a hat. Don't go to the department store, get a walking stick and shoes. Don't go to the bank and get traveler's checks. Okay? From right here where I'm talking to you. Don't do that. Just go with what you got on, shoes you have on your feet, the hat you had on your head, you got a hat, the walking stick you got, if you got one, whatever you have with you, go now. Don't take a side trip and provision yourself. You will be provisioned by the people that you teach as you go along. That's what he means by that last phrase, the worker is worthy of his hire. Okay, support. All right. Paul says the same thing in his letters. Paul says that the preacher of righteousness, the preacher of the gospel, needs to be supported by the people that he's preaching to. All right? This is one reason why I do not live on my inheritance. I don't. My inheritance that I got from selling the ranch 14 years ago now is sitting in a trust account managed by a financial advisor, fiduciary, for my later use if and when I retire. When I keel over dead, it won't do me any good, will it? Anyway, it's not accessible to me without a written request, and a written request has to be justified. All right? Like when I pay my property taxes in California. Oh, right? Okay, so twice a year, I have a written request. Please take some of the money out of my portfolio so I can pay my property taxes in San Diego. Other than that, I live on what y'all pay me. That's it. I make a budget based upon what you pay me. I don't live on, I don't live in a huge, big, fancy mansion someplace and drive a Mercedes or anything like that. Okay, I live on what you guys provide for me. Okay, I feel that's very, very important. All right. Also, I don't even have Social Security from my wages as a pastor. When we graduated from seminary, we were given a choice. Now, they don't give them a choice anymore. At least they don't tell them about it. This choice is still there, but the Synod leaders don't tell them about it. When I graduated from seminary in 1981, and all the years before that, we were told, we were gathered together in the room, we were told, now, the government provides the exception for you. And the reason for this is important, is because of this verse. It's because of this verse. It's because of the Bible that the government does this, if you can believe that but basically what it is that when Social Security was established, churches, many churches, most churches objected. Because as you know, think about it in 1933. In 1933, the first payments went out for Social Security. How did those people get paid? The Social Security law was not passed until 1932. And people like my grandfather, he did not take Social Security, but people his age did. My other grandfather, for example, did. They got paid. Not a whole lot, but then again, money was worth a whole lot in those days. So let's just say for sake of, I don't know what my other grandfather got in Social Security, but let's say in 1933, he wasn't retired anyway, but let's say somebody else retires in 1933. Social Security has been around for 6 months. And by the way, income taxes in those days were not taken out every paycheck. Your Social Security was taken out on a yearly basis, or sometimes on a quarterly basis, depending on who you work for. So Social Security law passes in 1932. You retire in June of 1933. And let's say the government sends you a check for $50. And not only you, but a million other people. Where'd that money come from?
Terrorists.
Who?
Terrorists.
No, didn't come from Social Security taxes.
No, well, the taxes that the government
Where did it come from?
was getting off of sales of merchandise.
No. It was taken out of the regular revenues of the government, which in those days, most of the revenue of the government was through our good friend, Mr. Tariff.
Well, that's what I said. Terrorists.
Oh, I thought you said terrorists.
No, terrorists.
Sorry. So tariffs, yeah, tariff. So anyway, and it wasn't anybody's money. It certainly wasn't the person's money who retired in July of 1933,
Right.
because
They put nothing
they put up, well, maybe they put one payment in, maybe two. Let's say, just for sake of argument, they put 2 quarter payments in. Okay, whoop-de-doo. Okay. And so the churches, they said, wait a minute, this is government money. This is not our money. Now, to be fair, okay, Roosevelt intended, and his people intended, that Social Security would always be your money coming back to you years later. That was the original intention. That was the original intention. Original intention is the government would take money out of your, but they would put it someplace. They wouldn't spend it on anything else. They would put it away someplace, and it would be like in a bank, and it would be like in a savings account, and it would gather interest and so on and so forth. And then when you retired 50 years from then, or 40 years from then they would send that money back to you in pieces, monthly, and that would help you. Wasn't ever meant to be your only sustenance, but it was meant to be your money. In other words, the money you paid in, you got back. And that was it. You didn't get any more, you didn't get any less. That was the original intention. Okay? It was just that they didn't trust people to do this on their own, and they didn't trust them to put it in the bank and not touch it. Okay? If they did trust them to put it away regularly, they figured, well, they'll sneak in there and get it out to, take a vacation or do something. And so if we have it, then they can't do that. That was the idea. Because when the Depression hit in the early 1930s, a lot of people died. They starved to death, etc. Okay, and the government saw that, and they said, oh, we've got to fix this. Okay. Anyway, the churches said, we do not want to be supported by the government. It's separation of church and state. This was insistent on the churches. This was not the government that started this, okay? It was the churches. And the Lutheran Church in particular, the Synodical Conference, Missouri Synod, Wisconsin Synod, said to the government, it is wrong for our pastors to be paid by you, the government. That is wrong. That money came from Buddhists, it came from atheists, it came from Catholics, it came from Presbyterians, it came from whatever, and they should not be supporting. Jesus said, the worker is worthy of support by the people to whom they preach the gospel. And again, Paul sets this out. It's not the only verse. There's other verses that say the same thing. Okay? So the principle is the preacher, whoever he is, should be supported by the people he preaches to, and that's it. Nothing else. Now, in my case again, when I was in El Paso, our church took a big hit, lost half our members because of an economic situation. We're not able to pay my salary. So I asked permission of the congregation, can I go out and get a job? And they said, sure, as long as your work does not suffer. As long as you're still making calls, as long as you're still preaching on Sunday, as long as you're teaching Bible class, as long as you're doing all that stuff, then you want to take a job on the side, that's fine. So I did. And for 5 years, I taught public school as a permanent sub. But again, it was with their permission. If they said no, we just have to, I don't know, cinch up the belt a little. Because again, the principle is, I don't want to be getting money from the government for my work as a pastor.
Pastor?
Yeah.
You did the same thing during COVID because you were talking to us that you're not going to accept that money from
Right. Same thing. Same exact thing. Okay. And so, for example, I don't pay any Social Security tax on my salary from you guys. Okay. Because as I say, when I got out of seminary, they gave you options. They said you could participate in Social Security, knowing now at that time, 1981, we all knew at that point that the money you get back or that you get in Social Security when you retire, that's not your money. That money's long gone. Okay, that money's long gone. They spent that money in the Vietnam War, or maybe even before that. Okay, what you're getting is not your money anymore that they took out. And we also found out, or we knew by then, that a person can pay in very little and get quite a bit back. Or, in the case of my parents, a person can pay in a lot and get very little back. Okay, my dad, okay, he paid up the nose because his salary was always high throughout his whole life. So he paid big time. He paid the highest that you could possibly pay in Social Security. Okay, if he'd lived to be 120, he would never got his money back. Okay, so he was never going to get his money back. All right. On the other hand, some people who, frankly, don't pay anything, never paid anything into Social Security, they can get now what's called SSI. Okay, and SSI is that's money that doesn't come from anything you put in because you didn't put anything in. So we knew at that point, we knew that it's the government supporting us, okay, partially, or at least supporting our retirement partially. And so my class, 55 guys, we were given the option, you can be in or you can be out of Social Security for your salary from the church, not anything else you do. Like when I was in El Paso and I worked for the school district, I paid Social Security taxes on that money. When I worked for my father on the farm, on the ranch, I paid Social Security for that. I started paying the Social Security when I was 8 years old. You look at my statement now, I look at my statement now and I see, my statement starts in 1962. Okay? And so I had all my quarters in, as they say, I had all my quarters in before I even graduated from seminary. Because I worked all through college and seminary. I worked all the 8 years for college and seminary too, and I paid Social Security on that. So 8 years there, all my time from 8 years old to 20 years old, so 12 years there, and then 5 years teaching in the public school. So I had many years of Social Security already, but none for my salary as a pastor, 0. I would probably, if I did that, I would probably be getting right now twice as much, maybe 3 times as much a month in Social Security if I included all my work as a minister. Anyway, so that's why this is important, okay? Now, today, we have a real problem. We have a real problem in the church because in the problem in the church we have the government paying a lot of our pastors. A lot of guys took money during COVID. A lot of churches and a lot of pastors took money during COVID. They took it from the government. A lot of pastors paying into Social Security and getting twice as much back than they put in. So the government's basically giving him a very nice life. Okay? This is unbiblical. This is unbiblical. This should not be done. This is not what Jesus and Paul were talking about. And it makes us beholding to the government. So the government could come along any time and say, unless you preach this or unless you teach this, you're going to lose that money. Now, I'm not saying my brother pastors would necessarily change their preaching to keep their Social Security checks coming in. But it is a temptation. It is something that they'll have to watch very carefully. They can't do nothing to me. We're not going to give you your Social Security for your preaching because you're preaching stuff we don't like. I can just say, because I don't get anything from my preaching from you guys. It gives me a great deal of freedom. Okay? My brother pastors, they don't have that freedom. They can't thumb their nose at the government and risk losing what they're counting on now in their lives. So this is a big deal. And it also goes as far as receiving benefits from the government. Some would say we receive a benefit from the government because the government does not tax our property. That's somewhat true, I think. I think the day will come, and I think it's right around the corner. I think the day will come when the government will come to us and say, you are not providing a service any longer for your community because you are preaching against homosexuals and you are not letting women be pastors. You're not even letting women be voters in your church. And you are not supporting the government on whatever other topic it happens to be. And so we're going to remove your tax exemption from you, and you will have to pay tax on this property. If we had to pay tax on this property, it would be a pretty penny. Because you know what the valuation is on this property? Huh?
Million?
Oh, more than that. It's about 3 million now. Because 3 buildings, this building, that building, and the house. Don't forget the house. That house would rent in Sierra Vista today, that house would rent for anywhere between $1,800 and $2,400 a month. It's 5 bedrooms. It's 4,800 square feet.
Whoa,
That's a big house.
yeah.
And when we built it, when you built it for me, I had 5 children.
Well, what about Valencia staying over there?
Who?
Ooh,
Valentina.
I think my wife would object.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, if we were to have to pay tax on $3 million a year valuation, I don't know what that would be exactly, but it would be a pretty penny, and it would put a, huh?
30,000 minimum.
About 30,000. Okay, about $30,000 a year. Then let's just say, for argument's sake, and that would be a pretty good hit on our budget, wouldn't it? So that is a benefit that we receive from the government, okay? But it's only at the government's pleasure. And it's only because the government says churches are a help to the community. Churches help the community be a good community. And so they grant us that exemption.
Do you really think that would ever occur? Because think of all the Catholic churches,
Oh, yeah.
the sizes of them, having to pay property tax.
Well, I can imagine it happening real easy, because think of all of the lawsuits against the Catholic Church for abusing children. And I could say the government could come along and say, look, you guys are more detriment to the community than you are help, because your priests are out there abusing little boys and girls. And so we're going to take I think they would take it away from the Catholic Church first, frankly.
Well, I think since about 80% of our government are Catholics, I don't think that they would vote for that.
I still think it's going to happen. I really do. I don't know who they're going to start with. Maybe they'll start with Jehovah's Witness. I don't know. Well, anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there at that point, because what Jesus says here is, don't go out and provide yourself. You let the people that you preach to provide for you. You get your food from them. You get your clothing from them. If you need a new walking stick, you get it from them. If you need a new hat, if you need a coat, whatever you need, you get it from them. Okay? That's the basic biblical principle of supporting gospel preachers. Huh? All right, let's go on. Whatever city or village you enter, inquire who is worthy and stay in his house until you leave the city. So ask when you get there, who goes to synagogue every week? Oh, so and so over here. And who's real good with the poor, charity? Oh, this guy over here. And who has a house maybe with an extra room or two? Oh, that guy over here. And go there. I don't want to ask first. Hey, can I stay here? I'm a preacher sent from Jesus. Okay. Who knows how many houses they had to go to to find some place to squat? I don't know. We're not told. All right. As you enter the house, give it your greeting. Okay. So, be nice. Be a good house guest, in other words. If the house is worthy, give it your blessing of peace. Is not worthy, take back your blessing of peace. And whoever does not receive you or heed your words as you go out of the house or that city, shake the dust of your feet. So when you go to this house and you say, can I stay here? I'm sent from Jesus. And the person says, oh, wow, yeah, great. Come on in. Everything is cool. Whatever. You can have my master bedroom, whatever. Fine. And give peace to the house, bless the house, whatever, and stay there and work out of there when you're preaching in town. If, on the other hand, you go to the house, knock on the door, hey, I'm from Jesus, can I use your house? No, you can't use my house. Jesus is a nutcase. Get out of here. Okay? Then don't bless the house, and then, shake your feet, dust your feet off, and go find someplace else. All right? And if you're preaching in the city and you go and stand in the city square, and preach, and everybody starts throwing rotten tomatoes at you, right? Then hightail it out of town. And again, when you get out there, shake the dust of your feet. And basically what that means is, I don't want nothing to do with you. And I don't want no part of what's going to happen to you. Okay? When God comes to destroy that city, when God comes to punish that city, I don't want to have any dust on the soles of my feet to attract the destruction. Okay? That's what that means. Truly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in that day of judgment than for that city. So anybody, a whole town, whole village that rejects the message of Jesus, okay, they'll be worse off than Sodom and Gomorrah. Why?
Because they rejected Christ.
Okay, so Sodom and Gomorrah were unbelievers too.
And look what happened to them.
Well, right, but why will it be worse?
Well, I think it's
Choice.
Uh-huh. Go on.
And Sodom and Gomorrah rejected anything.
Well, did they get a choice? Did they really get a choice to hear the gospel from Jesus?
Oh.
No, of course not. They lived there thousands of years before Jesus. Okay, you were going to say, Bruce?
Well, I think extinction is extinction.
Okay, well, much worse.
Yeah, so
That's a good point.
I mean,
In what way worse?
well, probably more earthly pain.
You know, Jesus says this a bunch of times, doesn't he?
Oh, you know, it's probably spiritual death.
Well, yeah, but why would again, hell is hell, isn't it? Why does Jesus say this? We got time. This is as good a time as any to talk about this. Numerous times during his ministry, Jesus says that a certain place, okay, we'll call it city B. Okay. City B. He says it will be worse for city B than it would be for city A, okay? Let's say this is Sodom and Gomorrah cities, okay? And let's say this is, he says, for example, Capernaum, where his headquarters was,
Why do we call it San
Capernaum and Bethsaida, okay? Okay. So these guys get hell. But these guys get worse. Why?
Well, didn't Sodom and Gomorrah, they didn't expire in the flesh?
Well, yeah. Well, they got physical death, destruction, and spiritual destruction both.
Yeah.
Okay, true. But and let's say this. Okay, so the Romans come and destroy Capernaum and Bethsaida, which they did basically.
He is going to suffer for a longer period.
Oh, okay. So you're saying this is a quick death.
Yeah, the other one's slow and painful.
This is quick and this is long. Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. But when the Jewish wars happened and the Romans came and destroyed Jewish cities, it was pretty quick. I mean, it wasn't instant, but it was pretty quick. How worse? How worse? I'll tell you how worse, okay? Because of the gospel. Okay? Did Sodom and Gomorrah hear the gospel? Not really. I mean, certainly Lot was there, and Lot knew the promise of the Messiah and could have shared it. We don't know that he did, but he could have shared it. Also, Abraham lived fairly nearby, and we know Abraham had regular worship services. If they wanted to, they could have gone to Abraham's church, let's say, and hear about the coming Messiah. Okay? So, did they hear the gospel? Well, yeah, I'm going to say kind of, sort of, but not nearly the way that these two places did. They heard the gospel in spades. Jesus actually used Capernaum as his headquarters. Come and go from there. He did many, we're told the Bible says he did many miracles and preached many sermons in Capernaum and Bethsaida. Okay. So I think we can say, based on how much gospel they had. So they're in hell. Both bunches are in hell. But still, why is this one worse? Well, okay. So what are they thinking then for all eternity? What is going on in their brain, in their minds for all eternity? The people in Sodom and Gomorrah, Tyre and Sidon, Rome in its pagan days, Athens in its pagan days, they're in hell. What are they thinking? We're in hell. That's a bummer. We don't like to be in hell. Okay? But people in Bethsaida, in Jerusalem, why didn't we listen? In other words, they are thinking, we were this close, as Maxwell Smart used to say. We were this close. We were right. He was standing right in front of us. He healed that leper right in front of us. We saw it and we rejected it. This is why Jesus describes hell not just with fire and brimstone and all that, which is true, but he describes hell most of the time as gnashing of teeth. When do you do that? You do that when you just missed those lotto numbers, right? A lot of numbers come out and you're one number off. Oh, you probably still get a couple $1 million, but if I just, I would have put down 14 instead of 15. What do? You gnash your teeth. Okay, right? Yeah. So that's the difference. Whenever you hear Jesus say, it'll be worse for you, whatever, name somebody or place, than it is for this place that we know is bad, Sodom and Gomorrah, Tyre and Sidon, whatever. Okay? That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about anything else. Physically, same thing happens. They're destroyed. Spiritually, same thing happens. They go to hell. But while they're there, it's worse because those people are thinking to themselves, he was right there. Or that missionary came to my door. That Baptist, that Lutheran, Pastor Spencer, and back in El Paso, left a leaflet at my door. I didn't even look at it. I ripped it up, threw it in the trash. Darn!
I could have been in paradise.
That's right. That is worse. Being in hell's bad enough. But imagine being in hell when you were that close. When you were, let's say you were born, raised in the church. Huh? Think about those people. Think about those people who were born and raised in the church, baptized in the church, confirmed in the church, married in the church, everything else. They get out in the world, start growing, start having family and kids, never go back to church again. And their faith dwindles and dwindles and dwindles and dwindles until it's all gone. Imagine those people. Imagine those people. We used to go to vacation Bible school all the time. We used to go to Sunday school all the time. We were in church every Sunday because our parents took them every single Sunday. And then eventually they become unbelievers. Imagine those people. Imagine what they're thinking for all eternity in hell. They're really beating themselves up. They're at the bottom of 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 the bottom. You can't get any worse than that. At At least the guy who, who missed the missionary at his screen door, that was one time. He's kind of saying, yeah, I should have let the guy in. I should have read his pamphlet. Oh, well, that's life. Okay. Okay, so he's going to suffer a little bit more in hell. But imagine being in church every Sunday till you're 17 or 18 years old. Then you go off to college and chuck it all. Imagine that. Imagine going through confirmation class, sit through it, memorizing all those Bible passages, memorizing those hymns, and then sit in hell for the rest of eternity. Again, that's got to be the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the barrel. That's got to be the absolute worst. So that's what Jesus is talking about when he says this kind of stuff. So when you hear that in a reading, that's what you're supposed to, that's what he wants you to think. Okay? Right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You just mentioned about all those people going through catechism and stuff
Mhm,
like that, memorizing all of which I had to do
Sure,
and stuff like that.
sure.
So what about today? Do they still have to memorize and stuff like that? I don't
No.
see it happening.
No.
So maybe that's why we're losing them also.
That's not it.
It's part of it, I would think.
Tiny little piece.
Yeah.
That's not the problem.
Society and the internet.
No, not even. It's not even that. No, I don't think. It's not even that. What do I say? It's a complicated problem. There's no simple solution. I don't think, Tony.
Well, they're taking religion out of schools. So
Well, yeah, all that stuff doesn't help. That's true. It doesn't help. But okay, in the last few years, I've confirmed quite, 8 or 10 kids, 8 or 10 teenagers, and younger. They're just not. They're not spiritual. They're just not spiritual. Even if they're in church every Sunday, they're just not spiritual. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the food or the water or the additives in the food. I don't know. They're not very smart.
No, and they don't want to look at you in the eye or talk to you. They just hang their head.
Yeah.
They don't want to be here.
Well, but again, I think it's a mental / intellectual issue. Okay, they don't speak up, like you say. They don't. They don't.
they don't have a thought for themselves.
No, they got too much thought for themselves. That's all they think of is themselves.
Express it.
Well, but they don't have any good thought of themselves. Let's put it that way. They don't have any self-esteem, that we used to call it. Okay, I don't know, Tony. I mean, I've been in this business 43 years, and let's say when I went back a few years ago, I went back to Wisconsin for the 100th anniversary or 120th anniversary, whatever it was, 125th anniversary of the congregation where I served in Wisconsin. And I noticed a lot of the kids that I confirmed, I was there for 6 years. So I confirmed 6 classes. Each class had 10, 12 kids in it. Those days, that's bigger families. So let's say 6 years, let's say 80 kids, just for sake of argument. I saw maybe 1 or 2. And every single one of them remembered 100 Bible passages. That was my rule in the day. 100 Bible passages, 50 hymn verses, okay, books of the Bible, Kings of Israel, whatever, blah, 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 all kinds of stuff. Maybe 1 or 2 was in church. And I would talk to some of the grandparents that were there and the parents that were there, and I said, "Your kids still going to church?" No. One of my best families, I mean, probably the best family I had the whole 6 years I was there. The parents are divorced. They had 3 kids. One of the kid is a total atheist, complete total atheist. And I took all the kids through confirmation, and they were good students, really faithful, very good, never missed a class, never missed an assignment, did everything I asked them to do. One of them's an atheist. One of them's a Buddhist. Very active, practicing Buddhist and a vegan. And their parents were cattle farmers. Can you imagine that? One of your kids, you're a cattle farmer, one of your kids becomes a vegan. And the other one goes to church 3 or 4 times a year. That's about it. Doesn't really care one way or another. 3 out of 3. 0. And they were good kids, good parents, church every Sunday, Sunday school, vacation Bible school, the whole 9 yards, catechism, everything. 0 for 3.
About parents being cattle farmers and the kids become vegan. I seen a deal on TV the other day. Cooking shows. And her parents owned a great big farm there in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're into everything.
Yeah.
Cattle, sheep, chickens.
Oh, sure.
turkeys,
Yeah.
The whole 9 yards. And she's running a vegan restaurant in Minneapolis, you know. She says, "Oh, I can't stand putting anything."
Yeah, that's this middle child of this 3 kids, the middle girl. Yeah, she says the same thing. I can't even be in the same room when somebody's eating a hamburger. Makes me sick. Makes me sick. I can't go with my friends. You know, they go out to a restaurant or something. I can't go with them unless they all eat vegan, because I can't be at the same table with them while they're cutting open a steak or whatever.
Well, I think the answer to your question is society.
Yeah, but how do you fix the whole entire society?
Well, actually, it's factored, there's no work ethic in the youth today.
Well, that's true, but I'm sure that has something to do with it. But
They can't
Oh.
hold a job more than a year at a time. And they're constantly looking for something that doesn't exist.
all I know, guys, is that, yeah, things have changed, Tony, and that's right. And I don't require half of what I used to require, because if I did, I would never confirm anybody.
Yeah.
They'd never finish the class. Never. And even that's even with good parents and church-going people. And
Down to the education system.
well, I was going to say that's a big deal of it, because like I asked kids today, I said, do you, like, when you were in school, you had to memorize the Gettysburg Address, right? Yeah, so did I. Preamble to the Constitution. You had to write that. First paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. You had to, right? You had to memorize that stuff. I remember having to memorize the Raven
Well,
for class.
you either knew that or you didn't graduate on 8th grade.
Right.
And when you got to high school, if you could not pass a test on Arizona's Constitution,
Yeah.
the U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, you forget it. You weren't getting a diploma.
No, that's right. I know. So the kids, and sometimes I even will take a whole lesson, a session, and tell, this is how you memorize. This is how you do that process. Okay? Because they've never been taught that, ever. It's like try to read your writing. There's no writing classes anymore in school. Try to read their writing. It's chicken scratch. It might as well be Chinese.
Yeah.
I can't read it.
Well, half of your college kids can't even read a clock.
No, I know. Yeah.
Well, most of them can't sign their name.
Yeah, they can't. Yeah. Yeah. Let's, yeah, that's it. Okay, that's it. We will pick it up at verse 16.
I forget what state it is. They just instituted that you have to learn how to write cursive with a fountain pen.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. I'm gonna,
Actually,